Let's learn about what nurses need to know about the Ontario Mental Health Act. We will review the HSN policy and standards of work that you learned about during your unit orientation. They are available electronically and in resource binders on the unit. They include the HSN policy, the Mental Health Act, Officer in Charge, the Out-of-Town Admission Standard of Work, and the Mental Health Act Form Standard of Work. The Mental Health Act, Officer in Charge policy, protects the rights of all patients presenting with psychiatric/mental health needs. The policy states that the officer in charge shall review the documents for compliance with the criteria outlined in this act. If the documents are not properly completed, the officer in charge shall inform the attending physician. As indicated in the policy, the role of officer in charge is delegated to the Child and Adolescent Mental Health Program's registered nurses and registered practical nurses. Our responsibilities as a Schedule I facility are embedded into many of our standards of work. The Child and Adolescent Program Nurse Standard of Work, the Charge Nurse Standard of Work, the Mental Health Act Form Standard of Work, and the Out-of-Town Admissions Standard of Work. As a regulated healthcare professional, it is your responsibility to be familiar with these documents. If you are not familiar with them, ask a fellow nurse, the charge nurse or nurse clinician to show you where they can be found so that you can review them. Now, let's talk about Form 1s, which are an application for psychiatric assessment. For patients that are admitted from HSN's emergency department, it is the assigned nurse that is responsible for reviewing the Form 1 for accuracy and making sure that the Form 42, which is the notice to patient, has been given to the patient. Form 1s, again, the application for psychiatric assessment. For patients that are admitted from out-of-town hospitals like Espanola and Manitoulin Island, the assigned nurse must give the Form 1 to the charge nurse as soon as the patient arrives on the unit, and make sure that the patient is provided with a Form 42. The charge nurse, as officer in charge, must review the form for accuracy, sign including date and time indicating when the patient arrived to the unit. This should be co-signed with the name of the on-call psychiatrist or psych on-call. Patients from out-of-town hospitals will likely not have received a Form 42. The officer in charge can complete a Form 42 to give to the patient, based on the criteria listed in the Form 1. This is because the physician who issues the Form 1, if not in a psychiatric facility, is not required to deliver a Form 42. It is the responsibility of the officer in charge. As outlined in the Standard of Work for out-of-town admissions, the assigned nurse must inform the psych on-call or GP on-call after hours that the patient has arrived and obtain admission orders. I forgot to mention the Mental Health Act Form Standard of Work. This document outlines step by step the assigned nurse, the shift nurse, and the officer in charge's responsibilities in processing forms related to the Mental Health Act. For Form 3 and 4s, which are a certificate of involuntary admission, the charge nurse must review the form for accuracy and stamp the form with the reviewed by officer in charge stamp and sign. If the form is not properly Finally, let's talk about the night shift nurse's standard of work. It is the night shift nurse's responsibility to review the legal section of each patient to ensure that all documents are present, reviewed, and in order. Also, it is important to make sure that patients of forms that require rights advice, such as certificates of involuntary admission, that rights advice was received within 24 hours. You will know that rights advice was received by the Form 50. The orientation checklist that was completed and submitted to your manager indicates that you received orientation about the policy and standards of work discussed in the presentation. Thank you for listening. And welcome to the team. We are happy to have you. Please feel free to ask questions whenever you need.